every hidden advantage of your genetic ancestry. Let's see what's in the video.
African roots. Let's start at the very beginning.
African people, no doubt कि वो भागते बढ़िया है बड़े भाई। ये काले लोग जो है अफ्रीकन, ये भागते हैं, ठीक है, एंड दे आर फिजिकली मोर पावरफुल। ये तो एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा। ओके, लेट्स सी। और तो क्या हो सकता है, आई डोंट नो। यही है, मेरा तो यही सीन है, ठीक
Because if your DNA traces back to sub-Saharan Africa,
है। हाँ,
congratulations, you are carrying the oldest human genetic code on the planet. Scientists call Africa the cradle of humanity, which is a fancy way of saying everyone else is basically a remix of you. But beyond bragging rights at the dinner table, there are real, documented biological advantages baked into this ancestry. People with deep West African roots tend to have a higher ratio of fast-twitch muscle fibers. These are the muscle fibers responsible for explosive power and speed. This isn't a
ट्रू।
myth. It's the reason athletes with this ancestry have
आई मीन उनको विदाउट एक्सरसाइज उनके पास गुड अमाउंट ऑफ मसल्स होते हैं। अगर आपने नोटिस किया हो, किसी भी ब्लैक पर्सन अगर आपने देखा हो ऑन इंटरनेट, ऑब्वियसली विदाउट एफर्ट्स उनके पास मसल्स होता है। बड़े भाई, हमें कितनी मेहनत करनी पड़ती है टू बिल्ड दिस। ये चीजें बनाने के लिए कितनी मेहनत करनी पड़ती है, और उनके पास जेनेटिक्स, दे हैव गुड जेनेटिक्स।
dominated sprinting events for decades. Usain Bolt didn't just train hard. His
या
muscles were literally built different. Then there's bone density. Studies have consistently shown that individuals of African descent have significantly higher bone mineral density than other populations. What does that mean practically? Lower rates of osteoporosis, stronger skeletal structure. You're basically walking around with reinforced bones while everyone else is hoping their calcium supplement kicks in. There's also the matter of heat tolerance. Populations adapted to equatorial climates developed more efficient sweat glands and a higher density of them, allowing the body to cool itself faster under extreme heat. If you've ever watched someone of West African ancestry barely break a sweat while others are melting, now you know why. And here's the wildest part: genetic diversity. Sub-Saharan African populations have
क्या उनकी डाइट इतनी अच्छी है कि दे कैन मेंटेन दैट अमाउंट ऑफ मसल्स जो उनके पास जो बाय डिफॉल्ट होते हैं जेनेटिकली? उतनी अच्छी डाइट आई डोंट थिंक सो कि उनकी होती है। अगर
more genetic diversity than the rest of the entire world combined. The rest of humanity is genetically a narrowed subset of African variation. That diversity means a broader immune response toolkit, more variation in disease resistance, and frankly, more evolutionary options on the table. Think of it this way.
yeah,
While everyone else is working from an edited highlight reel, African ancestry is carrying the full uncut director's edition of human DNA. East Asian. If East Asian
ईस्ट एशियन, उन उनमें क्या स्पेशल है जेनेटिकली? दे आर मोर स्मार्ट इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस, राइट, एंड दैट्स इट। कुछ लड़कियों के हिसाब से दे लुक मोर अट्रैक्टिव, लाइक बेस्ड ऑन फेस कार्ड एंड ऑल। बट लेट्स सी, इसका क्या कहना है, सुनो इसको
ancestry
सुनो।
were a product, the tagline would be optimized for longevity. Low
एंड हाँ, दे लिव लॉन्गर आई गेस। जापान के लोग दे लिव लॉन्गर, राइट? तो मे बी अज्यूम कर सकते हो कि
maintenance,
लेट्स से
extremely efficient. East Asian populations, particularly those from China, Japan, Korea, and surrounding regions, have some of the highest average lifespans on Earth.
या
Japan
आई एम करेक्ट।
consistently tops global longevity charts. And it's not just the diet, though. The diet,
इज देयर
Japan
इंडिया?
consistently tops global
नहीं नहीं, इंडिया नहीं है। जापान, स्पेन, स्विट्जरलैंड, सिंगापुर, इटली, फ्रांस, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, कोरिया। ओके,
longevity charts. And it's not just the diet, though. The diet does slap. It's also genetics.
जेनेटिक।
One well-studied advantage is a variant in the ALDH
अगर मैं गलत नहीं हूँ, ओके, तो वी ह्यूमंस ऑलमोस्ट शेयर 99.9% सेम डीएनए, बट स्टिल वी आर सो डिफरेंट बेस्ड ऑन दैट 0.01%। हाउ डिफरेंट? आई मीन लुक्स अलग है टोटली, कलर स्किन अलग है, हाइट, वेट, मसल मास, काफी चीजें अलग है। आई मीन सो डिफरेंट, राइट? और इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, तो जो चिंपैंजीज एंड जो ये एनिमल्स हैं, उनमें और हमारे डीएनए में डिफरेंस होता है अराउंड 2% या 1%। एंड वी आर सो इंटेलिजेंट, और वो नहीं है, वो बुद्धू है, ठीक है, बेसिकली। सो छोटी छोटी चीजों में कितनी वेराइटीज है, लाइक
2 gene, which affects alcohol metabolism. Now, you might be thinking, wait, doesn't that
व्हाट।
cause flushing and discomfort? Yes, it does. But here's the plot twist. That very reaction is also believed to be protective against alcoholism. Your genes are literally saying, you've had enough, go home. That's not a disadvantage, that's a built-in responsible drinking policy. East Asian populations also tend to have lower rates of cardiovascular disease in certain genetic subgroups, partly linked to cholesterol metabolism differences. Some studies have noted higher frequencies of genetic variants associated with lower LDL cholesterol levels. There's also earwax. Yes, earwax.
व्हाट।
East Asian ancestry is associated with a gene variant, ABCC11, that produces dry, flaky earwax instead of wet, sticky earwax.
ओके।
This same gene also reduces body odor, less earwax buildup. This is a genuine
हम इंडियंस में ओडोर काफी स्ट्रांग होता है ज्यादा, राइट?
genetic advantage, and I'm genuinely jealous. Skin aging is another one. Higher melanin concentration and thicker dermis in many East Asian individuals means statistically slower visible aging. The phrase, doesn't age, isn't just a compliment. It's partially written in the genome. Science has officially confirmed what the internet has suspected for years. Some people just came pre-installed with an anti-aging patch the rest of us never received. South Asian.
आई मीन काफी ऑन सोशल मीडिया लोग, स्पेशली जो लड़कियां है, वो ट्राई करते हैं कि कोरियन ग्लास स्किन एंड ऑल दैट शीट, बट उनको नहीं पता कि इट्स ऑल अबाउट, नॉट ऑल अबाउट, बट इट्स पार्शली अबाउट। सबसे ज्यादा चीज तो वही है ना, जेनेटिक्स। एंड देयर इज नो चांस कि तुम कुछ चीजें लगाने से यू आर गोना लुक लाइक देम। इट्स मोस्टली जेनेटिक्स, राइट? हु गोना टेल
South
देम?
Asian ancestry spanning India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal comes with a fascinating biological story. It's complex, a little contradictory, and absolutely worth unpacking. Here's the paradox. South Asian populations have
आई एम एक्साइटेड बाय द वे।
a higher genetic predisposition to certain metabolic conditions like type 2 diabetes. But before you close the tab, that same metabolic sensitivity is a double-edged sword because it also means the body is incredibly responsive to dietary and lifestyle changes. What hurts you faster can also heal you faster. Where South Asian ancestry genuinely shines is cognitive and neurological diversity. South Asian populations carry some of the highest concentrations of genetic variants linked to high IQ scores in international studies, though.
ओके। आई मीन वी इंडियंस सबसे ज्यादा आईक्यू तो नहीं, अगर इफ इस अगर स्टैटिस्टिक वाइज देखे तो इंडिया का उतना नहीं है, बट ठीक है।
It's always worth noting that intelligence is wildly polygenic and influenced by environment, but the data exists and it's interesting. More concretely, there's lactase persistence. A
या
significant portion of
लैक्टोस।
South Asian populations carry variants, allowing them to digest dairy well into adulthood, useful in cultures where dairy is a dietary staple and spiritual cornerstone simultaneously. Your ability to enjoy paneer guilt-free is, in part, genetic destiny. South Asia is also a genetic crossroads, a meeting point of ancient migrations from Africa, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia. That mixing means South Asian genomes carry extraordinary variation, which translates to a broader immune response range. Diverse ancestry equals diverse immunity. It's math. And unlike the math on your tax return, this kind actually works in your favor. European genes. Let's talk about European.
ओके, यूरोपियंस में क्या खास है? नथिंग। आई मीन या मेरे दिमाग में तो कुछ नहीं है, लेट्स सी क्या है।
Specifically, what happens when a group of humans migrates north, the sun disappears for 6 months, and evolution has to improvise. The most famous European genetic adaptation is light skin, a relatively recent development, evolutionarily speaking. About 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, European populations began shifting toward lighter pigmentation. Why? Because in low sunlight environments, lighter skin produces vitamin D more efficiently from whatever weak sunlight exists. Vitamin D deficiency is no joke. It affects bone health, immune function, mood, and more. Light skin in Northern Europeans is essentially a solar panel upgrade for a cloudy climate. Then there's lactase persistence.
ओके।
Europeans, particularly Northern Europeans, have the highest rates of lactase persistence in the world, meaning they can digest milk as adults at rates approaching 90% in some Scandinavian populations. This was a massive evolutionary advantage when agriculture brought cattle into the picture. Suddenly, there was a giant, calorie-dense, protein-rich food source that only some people could digest. Europeans hit that genetic jackpot. There's also cold weather adaptation. Northern European populations developed more efficient fat metabolism in cold conditions. Thicker subcutaneous fat distribution in certain groups helps retain heat. It's not glamorous, but when it's minus 30 degrees Celsius outside, efficiency is everything. And Neanderthal DNA, yes, really. Europeans and Asians carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, more
Okay.
than sub-Saharan Africans. Some of those Neanderthal gene variants are linked to stronger immune responses to specific pathogens, as Neanderthals had been surviving European environments.
I imagine that अगर और ह्यूमन स्पीसीज होती तो कैसे हम को एग्जिस्ट करते हैं लाइक नियंडरथाल्स एंड होमो हिबिलिस और समथिंग राइट लाइफ कैसी होती आई डोंट नो
For hundreds of
आई डोंट
thousands of
नो
years.
दैट्स इट
Evolution recycled some of their best work. So the next time someone calls you a Neanderthal, technically
या
depending on your ancestry, that's a partial compliment with scientific backing. Indigenous American. Indigenous peoples of the Americas developed in remarkable geographic isolation after crossing into the continent roughly 15,000 to 20,000 years ago. What that isolation created was a gene pool finely tuned to the Western Hemisphere's environments, from Arctic tundra to equatorial Amazon to high-altitude Andes. High-altitude adaptation is perhaps the most striking. Andean populations, particularly Quechua and Aymara peoples, carry genetic variants that allow them to thrive at elevations that would give most people a splitting headache and altitude sickness. Their bodies efficiently use oxygen at lower atmospheric pressures through
ओके
adaptations in hemoglobin production and cardiovascular function. They live at 4,000 meters like it's nothing. You'd be gasping. Cold tolerance in Arctic indigenous populations like the Inuit involves genetic variants affecting fatty acid metabolism. Their genetics allow more efficient conversion of marine fat into usable body heat. They can subsist on diets that are almost entirely fat and protein and remain in peak metabolic health. No keto influencer has anything on this. This is the original. Indigenous American populations also have some of the lowest rates of certain autoimmune conditions linked to specific immune gene variants. There's also evidence of unique gut microbiome compositions in some groups that provide superior digestion of native plant foods and resistance to certain gastrointestinal infections. Thousands of years eating directly from the land didn't just build culture, it rebuilt biology from the inside out. Middle Eastern
मिडल ईस्टर्न्स उनका क्या है आई
populations from the Middle East and North Africa, an area stretching from Morocco to Iran, have been shaped by thousands of years of desert survival, urban civilization, and being literally at the crossroads of 3 continents. Heat and aridity adaptation are the standout traits.
ओके वो गर्मी को ज्यादा अच्छे से हैंडल कर सकते हैं हम इंडियंस में क्या खासियत है मे बी ठंडी और गर्मी मे बी मोस्टली गर्मी अगर मैं अपनी बात करूँ तो मैं ठंडी में उतना अच्छा फील नहीं करूंगा रादर देन अगर गर्मी में गर्मी को मैं कंट्रोल कर सकता हूँ लाइक बट ठंडी में नो चांस मैं नहीं कर सकता
MENA populations developed physiological responses to extreme heat that include efficient kidney function to conserve water, lower resting sweat rates, sweating strategically, not wastefully, and cardiovascular adjustments that keep blood pressure stable in hot, dry conditions.
ओके
There's also an extraordinary immune heritage. The Middle East was home to some of the world's first cities: Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Levant. Dense urban living for thousands of years meant exposure to every pathogen imaginable. The populations that survived did so because they developed robust immune genetics. Modern descendants carry some of that pathogen-fighting legacy.
बट एक चीज तो एक्सेप्ट करनी पड़ेगी कि अकॉर्डिंग टू माय नॉलेज सबसे बेस्ट इम्यून सिस्टम हम इंडियंस की है आई मीन जैसे ही बाहर के लोग यहाँ पे आते हैं फॉर टूरिज्म और वो जैसे ही कुछ खाते हैं इवन 5 स्टार होटल्स में भी कुछ खाते हैं तो उनको दे गेट सिक उनसे नहीं हो पाता डाइजेस्ट आई मीन और हमें वी हैव नो इश्यू हम कहाँ भी कुछ भी खा लें वी कैन डाइजेस्ट मे बी क्योंकि हमारी लाइफस्टाइल उतनी घटिया है मे बी आई डोंट नो बट यस
In their HLA gene variants, the genes that govern immune response. Certain MENA populations also show resistance to specific diseases. Familial Mediterranean fever is well known in the region, but interestingly, carriers of one copy of the gene, not two, may have an advantage in fighting certain inflammatory infections. Nature's compromise, and mathematically and spatially, MENA
Okay.
populations were the foundation of algebra, astronomy, and early medicine.
Yes.
Whether that's genetic or cultural legacy is a debate for philosophers, but the mathematical traditions encoded in these cultures for millennia are worth acknowledging. They were calculating the movement of stars while the rest of the world was still arguing about whether the sun was a god or just a very aggressive rock. Southeast
ये तो हम इंडियंस भी करते थे, राइट? क्या नई चीज़ है?
Southeast Asian ancestry encompassing Thailand, Vietnam, the
ओके।
Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and
इनको हम सेम कैटेगरी में नहीं डाल सकते क्या? चाइनीज, जापानीज एंड कोरियन? क्यों? आई मीन, व्हाट्स डिफरेंस? आई मीन, देखने में तो सेम है एटलीस्ट। तो फिर
surrounding islands produced one of the most remarkable human adaptations ever documented. The Bajau people of maritime Southeast
बादशाह।
Asia are essentially human seals. They can free dive to depths of 60 plus
ओह हाँ,
meters
ये
and hold their breath for 13 minutes. Scientists studied their genetics and found
13 मिनट्स, 13 मिनट्स तक ब्रेथ को होल्ड करना। आई कैन नॉट। मैं मैक्स टू मैक्स आई गेस 4 मिनट, 3 मिनट, दैट्स इट। उसके बाद फिर सीधी मेरी बात, आई एम डेड। ठीक है, दूसरे दिन मेरे को जलाया जाएगा। दैट्स इट।
that the Bajau have spleens significantly larger than neighboring land-based populations. The spleen acts as an oxygen reserve during diving. It contracts and releases oxygenated red blood cells into circulation. Their PDE10A gene variant is responsible. It's a real, measurable genetic superpower. Beyond the Bajau, Southeast Asian populations broadly show strong malaria resistance variants. Given that much of the region is tropical and historically malaria endemic, this makes complete sense. Certain hemoglobin variants common in the region protect against severe malaria outcomes, the same way sickle cell trait protects in West Africa. There's
ओके।
also exceptional fine motor skill and visual spatial processing found in many Southeast Asian populations in research contexts. Whether genetic or developmental,
आई मीन, ये लोग गेमिंग में दे आर एक्सेप्शनल, अगर आपको पता हो तो। दे लाइक, यू नो, स्पोर्ट्स और उन सारी चीज़ों में काफ़ी एक्सेप्शनल परफॉर्मेंस करते हैं। दैट्स इट।
populations with multi-generational traditions of intricate craftsmanship, textile work, and agriculture show measurable advantages in these areas. Skin resilience is another one. Melanin levels across most Southeast Asian populations provide meaningful UV protection, reducing skin cancer risk while still allowing efficient vitamin D synthesis in tropical sun conditions. It's a better balance than either extreme. Not too much sun damage, not too little vitamin D. Southeast Asian genetics essentially figured out the SPF equation before sunscreen was even invented. Oceanian blood. Last but absolutely not least, and
ओशियानी।
possibly the most jaw-dropping genetic story on this list. Aboriginal Australians carry
ओके, सो ये प्रोबेबली है ऑस्ट्रेलियन एंड न्यूजीलैंड वहाँ के ट्राइबल
the
पीपल,
oldest
राइट?
continuous cultural and genetic lineage outside of Africa. Their ancestors arrived in Australia approximately 50,000 to 65,000 years ago and adapted to one of the harshest, most unforgiving environments on Earth. The Australian outback does not care about you. It is actively trying to kill you. And yet, they thrived. Aboriginal Australians developed exceptional spatial navigation and environmental reading abilities over tens of thousands of years. Research has documented extraordinary long-distance tracking and survival skills that are partly trained and partly supported by genetics, influencing spatial cognition development. People navigate hundreds of kilometers of featureless desert using stars, wind, and geological markers. Heat and drought endurance are also genetically encoded. Their bodies conserve water with remarkable efficiency, and certain metabolic adaptations allow extended high-performance function on minimal calories, crucial in feast and famine environments. Pacific Islanders, Polynesians, Melanesians, Micronesians are the world's greatest ocean navigators by ancestry. Polynesian ancestors crossed thousands of miles of open ocean in canoes using only stars, wave patterns, and biological intuition. Genetic research has identified variants linked to exceptional cardiovascular endurance that allowed their ancestors to sustain physical exertion across multi-week ocean voyages with limited food and water. Polynesian populations also carry variants associated with greater muscle mass and bone density, a physique built for ocean survival. It's why Polynesian athletes are consistently overrepresented in contact sports worldwide. They didn't train for this. Their ancestors lived for this. And perhaps most fascinatingly, Melanesian populations carry a small percentage of Denisovan DNA, a mysterious, ancient human species distinct from Neanderthals. What advantages those genes confer is still being studied. But carrying DNA from a species we barely understand? That's not a disadvantage. That's being genetically ahead of the research. Scientists are literally still trying to figure out what this DNA does, which means Melanesian ancestry is walking around with features that haven't
ओके
even been fully decoded yet. That's not a gene.
ओके मुझे लगता है अगर ब्रिटिशर्स ने यू नो अपनी टांग ना अड़ाई होती लाइक इंडिया में नो इंडिया में तो काफी डैमेज नहीं हुआ बट स्पेशली इन नॉर्थ अमेरिका देन ऑस्ट्रेलिया एंड ये सारे एरियाज में अगर वो कॉलोनीज ना बनाते तो वहाँ के जो नेटिव पीपल है वो आज भी काफी ह्यूज नंबर में होते हैं एग्जिस्ट करते हैं बट they ruined everything and that's it. That was the video. See you.